I worked hard to support parents, but sister stole their money and now I'm hiring a lawyer to sue her. But my parents shocked me with a statement, and sister laughs, but I. Growing up, my parents always told me that family was everything. You take care of each other no matter what, they used to say, and I lived by that. When they retired and their health began to fail, I stepped up. My father had worked hard all his life, and my mother had given everything to us. Supporting them felt like the least I could do. I'm not a millionaire or anything, but I've done well for myself. Every month I'd send them enough to cover their bills, food, and a little extra to make their lives comfortable. I thought it was working out fine until last month. It started when I decided to pay them an unannounced visit. My sister, Hannah, was there, sprawled out on the couch with an iced coffee in one hand and her cell phone in the other. She was dressed head to toe in a matching designer tracksuit, the kind that costs more than my rent. A gold bracelet sparkled on her wrist, and I noticed a new iPhone next to her. Hannah has always been the spoiled one, but this seemed excessive. She doesn't have a job, never really has. She's been bouncing between boyfriends and hobbies for years, but I figured she'd manage somehow. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I just sat with them, trying to ignore the little voice in my head asking where she was getting the money for all this. Then my mom asked me for money for groceries. That's when something clicked. Something felt wrong. I send them enough to more than cover everything, so why was she asking for more? I didn't want to accuse them of anything, but later that night I went over their bank statements. I asked my dad if I could look at their account under the guise of helping them get their finances in order. What I found made my stomach turn. Thousands of dollars were missing. ATM withdrawals, payments to high-end stores, online shopping, expensive restaurants, all things my parents never indulged in. When I confronted my mother, she looked nervous. At first she tried to dodge the questions, saying they were old and sometimes forgot things. But when I pressed her, she finally cracked. Hannah has used the card a little. A little? I repeated, staring at her. My heart was pounding. Mom, half your savings is gone. That's not a little. What is she even spending it on? She stammered something about how Hannah was going through a tough time, how she needed help, and how I shouldn't worry because you make good money. I couldn't believe it. So what? I'm just an ATM now. You're going to let her bleed you dry while you come to me for more? My dad remained silent, staring at the floor. My mom didn't say anything else, but the look on her face told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't going to do anything about it. I left that night in a haze. My parents, the people I worked so hard to support, were allowing Hannah to drain them. And the worst part? They didn't seem to care. But I wasn't going to let it go. The next step was to confront Hannah. I didn't sleep much that night. The thought of Hannah blowing through my parents' money I was working overtime to provide made my blood boil. I kept replaying the scene in my head, my mom shrugging it off, my dad saying nothing, and Hannah lounging around like a queen. I called her the next day. She didn't pick up, which wasn't surprising. She hates confrontation. So I went to her apartment instead. When she opened the door, she looked annoyed. "What are you doing here?" she asked, holding a cup of coffee in one hand and her cell phone in the other. I didn't waste any time. "We need to talk about Mom and Dad's money." Her expression didn't even change. She just rolled her eyes and stepped aside to let me in. Her apartment was littered with shopping bags and random gadgets, some still in their boxes. It felt like walking into a showroom for bad financial decisions. "What about your money?" she said, plopping down on the couch. "They spend it," I said. "Thousands of dollars, Hannah. Do you have any idea how hard I work to make sure they're taken care of?" She shrugged. "They're fine. It's not like they're starving or anything. And you have a good job, so what's the big deal?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "The big deal? Are you serious? You're draining their account for clothes and electronics while they're asking me for money to buy food." That's when she turned it around on me. "Oh, here we go. Mr. Perfect swooping in to save the day. You always think you're better than me because you have a job and you play the hero to Mom and Dad. News flash, they're my parents too, and I have needs. I was so angry I could barely speak. Needs? You buy jewelry and gadgets. Those aren't needs. She crossed her arms and smiled. You're just mad because you think everything has to be about you. News flash, not everything has to be about you. That's when I made a decision. I looked her straight in the eye and said, You're done. You're not going to live off Mom and Dad anymore. You're going to leave them alone and figure out your own life. She laughed, but I could tell it was more disbelief than humor. Oh, please. What are you going to do? Call the cops on me? I didn't answer. I turned and walked out the door. That's when I decided to hire a lawyer. Hannah thought I was bluffing. She always did. But this time I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I started researching my options, and a week later I met with a lawyer named Mark. Mark was straightforward, no nonsense. After I explained everything, he nodded and said, If she used their money without permission, that's theft. We can file a civil suit, and depending on how much she took, it could escalate to criminal charges. Hearing it laid out like that made it real. I had mixed feelings. This was my sister, after all. But the thought of her getting away with it while my parents struggled didn't sit right with me. I decided to go through with it. The first step was to gather evidence. Mark asked me for bank statements, receipts, and any evidence I could find that tied Hannah to the spending. As I dug deeper into her accounts, I found something I hadn't noticed before. There were transfers not just to Hannah's personal account, but to an account I didn't recognize. It wasn't hers, and it wasn't my parents'. I flagged it for Mark, and he said he'd look into it. He called me a few days later. We traced the account, he said. It belongs to a guy named Greg Larson. Does that name ring a bell? My stomach sank. Greg was Hannah's ex-boyfriend. The one who had supposedly done her wrong and left her broke. She'd spent months complaining about him after they broke up, making herself out to be the victim. She was giving him money? I asked in disbelief. Looks like it, Mark replied. Either they patched things up or she lied about the breakup. It felt like betrayal upon betrayal. Not only was she stealing from our parents, she was giving the money to a guy who'd already treated her like dirt. I confronted her again, this time with proof in hand. You send money to Greg? I asked. Her face paled for a split second before it recovered. So what? He needed help. Help? I snapped. He's not family. He's not your responsibility. You're stealing from Mom and Dad to pay for his life. She didn't even deny it. Instead, she turned it around on me, calling me controlling, selfish, and obsessed with making her look bad. She even accused me of trying to ruin her life because I was jealous of her freedom. I'd had enough. I told her that I was going to sue her and that she needed to get her own lawyer. But when I told my parents what I was planning, I was blindsided. No, my mother said firmly. You're not doing this. I stared at her, stunned. Mom, she stole thousands of dollars from you. From me. How can you defend her? She's still our daughter, she said. We can't let her go to jail. It would destroy her. My father, who rarely spoke, added, We couldn't live with ourselves if she went to jail because of this. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were more concerned about protecting her than standing up for themselves or me. You're really going to let her get away with this? I asked. My mom just said, Please let it go. For us. I didn't know what to say. After everything I'd done for them, they were asking me to walk away from the only chance we had to hold Hannah accountable. I spent a few days trying to process what my parents had said. It felt like a punch in the gut. After everything Hannah had done, stealing from them, lying to me, funneling money to Greg, they still wanted to protect her. Reluctantly, I told my lawyer to drop the case. I couldn't go against my parents' wishes, no matter how wrong I thought they were. Mark wasn't thrilled, but he understood. If you change your mind, let me know, he said. I thought that would be the end of it. But when Hannah found out, things got worse. She came to my house a few days later, uninvited. The moment I opened the door, She was smiling like she'd won the lottery. "So you backed out," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "I'm doing it for Mom and Dad," I replied. "Not for you." She rolled her eyes and laughed. "Oh, please. You're doing it because you know you're going to lose. You're all talk, big brother. Always have been." I clenched my fists but didn't respond. "And by the way," she continued, "thanks for all the money you sent. It really made my life easier. Greg thanks you too." I couldn't believe her audacity. She was openly mocking me, flaunting the fact that she'd gotten away with it. "You're disgusting," I said and slammed the door in her face. But that wasn't the end of it. She started posting cryptic messages on social media, things like, "Some people need to learn how to stay in their lane," and "It's funny when people think they have power, but they don't." She even posted a picture of herself wearing new jewelry with the caption, "Treat yourself, because why not?" It was infuriating. She wasn't just unapologetic, she was reveling in it. That's when I made a decision. If my parents wanted me to let it go, fine. But I wasn't going to continue to enable her. I stopped sending them money altogether. Instead, I told my parents that I would pay their bills directly: utilities, rent, groceries, everything. That way, Hannah didn't get a dime. When she found out, she went crazy. It didn't take long for Hannah to find out what I had done. She showed up at my parents' house the next day, furious. I wasn't there, but my mom called me afterwards to say that Hannah had been screaming about how I was ruining her life and trying to control everything. She's really upset. My mother said, almost pleading, "Can't you just help her a little?" "No, Mom," I said firmly. "She's not upset because she's struggling. She's upset because her free ride is over." But Hannah didn't stop there. She began calling me repeatedly, leaving voicemails that ranged from angry rants to tearful guilt trips. At first I ignored her, but then she did something that took me completely by surprise. One afternoon, I received a call from my bank. They said there had been a failed attempt to access my account online. Someone had tried to reset my password. I froze. "Do you know where the attempt came from?" I asked. The representative said the IP address was traced back to my parents' house. I was furious. Hannah was clearly trying to get into my account, probably to siphon off money since she couldn't get into my parents' house. I went straight to their house and confronted her. "You tried to hack into my account?" I demanded. She didn't even bother to deny it. "You're hoarding money while I'm struggling," she yelled. "You could have helped me, but instead you're acting like a saint while you screw me over." I turned to my parents, hoping they'd finally see how far she was willing to go. But they just looked helpless, caught between us. "Are you really okay with this?" I asked them. "We didn't know," my dad muttered. Hannah interrupted and pointed at me. "You think you're so much better than everyone else. You're nothing but a controlling loser." That's when something unexpected happened. My dad, who'd been silent through most of this, suddenly snapped. "Enough," he shouted, startling us all. "We've let you get away with too much for too long, Hannah. If you don't stop this, you're going to lose us." It was the first time I'd ever heard him raise his voice like that, and it shocked even Hannah. For a moment it looked like she might actually back down. But the moment passed. She grabbed her bag and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I thought maybe that was the end of it. But a week later, I got a letter in the mail, a cease and desist letter. From Hannah. When I opened the letter and saw Hannah's name at the top, I couldn't believe it. A cease and desist letter? From her? I skimmed it and my jaw dropped. She was accusing me of harassment and slander, claiming that I was ruining her reputation by spreading lies about her to our parents and trying to cut her off financially. The audacity was almost astounding. I called my attorney, Mark, and sent him the letter. He laughed when he read it. "This is nonsense," he said. "She doesn't have a leg to stand on. If anything, she's incriminating herself by putting all this in writing." Still, it felt like a slap in the face. She had no shame. Not only had she stolen from our parents and tried to hack into my account, but now she was trying to paint herself as the victim. A few days later, Hannah escalated again. She posted a long rant on social media, airing our family drama for all to see. In it, she painted me as a greedy, controlling sibling who was trying to cut her out of the family, because I couldn't stand her happiness. She even implied that I was financially abusive to our parents by paying their bills. What made it worse was how many people believed her. Friends and even some extended family began calling me to ask why I was so hard on Hannah. They'd heard her version of events and assumed I was the villain. One of her posts even caught the attention of a local blogger who wrote an article about sibling greed and how it tears families apart. It was vague enough not to name me directly, but anyone who knew us could put two and two together. I was angry, but Mark told me to stay calm. The more you react, the more fuel you give her. Let her dig her own grave, he advised. And then, out of nowhere, the unexpected happened. One of Greg's friends, the same Greg she'd been funneling money to, reached out to me. His name was Tyler, and he'd seen her social media posts. Apparently, he and Greg had recently fallen out, and Tyler wanted to set the record straight. She's lying to everyone, Tyler told me over the phone. She and Greg aren't even together anymore. He dumped her months ago. She paid him off because he threatened to expose some stuff she didn't want to get out. What kind of stuff? I asked. She was scamming people, Tyler said. Fake GoFundMe campaigns, lying about medical bills, stuff like that. Greg helped her with the accounts. When he tried to back off, she freaked out, so he started asking for hush money. It felt like the ground was shifting beneath my feet. I knew Hannah was manipulative, but this was another level. Tyler sent me screenshots of conversations between Greg and Hannah where she talked about setting up a new fundraiser and laughed about how gullible people could be. There were also messages where she was panicking about Greg exposing her and begging him not to ruin her life. I forwarded it all to Mark. This changes everything, he said. If this is true, this isn't just about your family anymore. She could be facing serious criminal charges. For the first time, I felt like I had a real chance of stopping her. But I also knew this was going to get ugly. Armed with Tyler's evidence, Mark and I took the next step. I filed a formal complaint with the authorities. It wasn't just about protecting my parents anymore, it was about stopping Hannah from scamming anyone else. As the investigation began, I made it clear to my parents that I wasn't going after them out of spite. This isn't about revenge, I told them. This is about accountability. They didn't take it well. My mother cried and begged me to reconsider. My father was mostly silent, but I could tell he was conflicted. She's your sister, he said at one point. Isn't there another way? There was, I replied. She had plenty of chances to quit. She chose not to. The investigation revealed more than I ever expected. Hannah had been running multiple scams, not just with Greg, but on her own. She'd faked a car accident, claimed to need surgery, and even posed as someone raising money for a sick child. Authorities traced more than $50,000 in fraudulent activity to her accounts. When confronted with the evidence, she tried to deny it at first, but there was no way out. Greg's messages, the GoFundMe records, and the bank statements painted a damning picture. Eventually she admitted some of it, blaming Greg and saying he'd forced her to do it. It didn't matter. She was arrested and charged with fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft. My parents were devastated. They refused to speak to me for weeks, blaming me for ruining the family. But I knew deep down they were just lashing out. It was easier to be angry with me than to face the truth about Hannah. The aftermath was messy. Hannah was sentenced to several years in prison, and Greg faced charges as well. My parents eventually started talking to me again, but things were never the same. I still paid their bills directly, but our relationship remained strained. As for Hannah, she didn't miss the opportunity to twist the knife one last time. She sent me a letter from prison, calling me a traitor, and saying I'd destroyed her life. But for the first time, I didn't feel guilty or angry, I just felt finished. I'm not going to pretend that this story has a happy ending. My family is broken, and some wounds may never heal. But I'm at peace with my decision. Hannah didn't just betray me, she betrayed everyone who trusted her. If I hadn't stepped in, she would have kept going, hurting more people along the way. And while it's not the resolution I wanted, it's the one that was necessary. Now I focus on what I can control. I still take care of my parents in my own way, but I've stopped trying to be the glue that holds it all together. Sometimes you have to let the pieces fall where they may.